Curiosity had a way of walking ahead of fear that winter, leaving Eliza May Harper standing in the snow with questions louder than the wind. She had arrived by sled at dusk, 26 years old, fingers numb, heart rehearsed for disappointment, carrying a single trunk and a reputation she did not believe in anymore. The mountains rose like closed doors, and the cabin waited among them, small, steady, refusing to apologize for its isolation. Somewhere inside stood Caleb Boone Wilder, 33, the man who had sent for her with ink that did not flatter or plead, only promised shelter and work and a life that required endurance. She paused on the porch because pausing felt safer than knocking. Beauty had carried her far enough to teach her its limits, and the town she passed through had already measured her with eyes sharp as frost. They whispered that she was the prettiest shipment yet, and also the most helpless, as if those qualities were twins that could not be separated. Eliza knew how to smile through judgment, but tonight her mouth would not obey. She wondered if the man inside would see her as the others had, as something temporary, as something to be returned when the weather improved. The door opened without ceremony. Caleb filled the frame in a way that surprised her, not with size alone, but with a calm that steadied the air. His hair was dark with snowmelt, his coat patched with care rather than poverty, his eyes observant without hunger. He did not reach for her trunk. He did not step aside too quickly. He simply looked, as if taking inventory of a life he meant to keep intact. Eliza felt herself becoming smaller and braver at once. "You can still leave," she whispered, because the words had lived in her mouth for years and needed release. She meant the snow, the mountains, the rumors, the man, and herself. The sentence was an offering and a test, shaped by old disappointments and newer hopes she refused to name. Snow fell harder, stitching silence into the moment. Caleb shook his head once, not in refusal but in certainty. "I already chose you," he said, plain as daylight, and stepped back to make space. The warmth that reached her was not heat, but intention. She crossed the threshold because something in his voice did not rush her, and because the cold had begun to feel like a verdict she no longer accepted. Inside, the cabin held order without ornament. A table worn smooth by use, a kettle waiting its turn, shelves stocked by seasons rather than abundance. Caleb took her coat and hung it to dry, careful not to brush her shoulders. He showed her where she would sleep, where she would keep her things, where water froze if forgotten. He spoke of winter as a teacher, not an enemy, and Eliza listened as if learning a new language. In town the next day, judgment arrived before kindness. Mrs. Halloway's mouth tightened at Eliza's gloves. The sheriff's gaze slid past her like a closed gate, and men measured the distance between her face and her future with casual cruelty. Caleb walked beside her without comment, carrying supplies, pausing when she paused, allowing the silence to be shared rather than filled. When a laugh followed them down the boardwalk, Eliza felt the old reflex to shrink, but his presence did not demand it. That night the wind tested the walls, and Eliza unpacked slowly, touching each small possession as proof she existed beyond the eyes of others. She thought of leaving again, of trains and softer roads, of places where beauty was currency and safety an illusion. Caleb split wood until the sound settled her thoughts, then left an extra blanket by her door, without explanation. The gesture felt like a promise, made in action rather than speech. She lay awake listening to the mountain breathe, aware that survival here would ask for more than admiration, that love, if it came, would arrive quietly or not at all. The snow deepened, sealing the cabin into its own small world, and Eliza understood the conflict clearly at last. She could remain the woman who waited to be dismissed, or she could become someone who learned the weight of staying. The choice was unfinished, but the door had closed gently, and for the first time she did not reach to open it. Outside, the storm gathered arguments, pressing snow against glass as if listening. Caleb moved to the cabin with deliberate economy, setting traps by lamplight, mending leather, measuring flour, never asking for gratitude. Eliza watched, learning the rhythm of a man who believed care was proven by preparation. She sensed that morning would bring tests the night could not predict, that town voices would return with sharper teeth, and that winter would demand decisions from them both. The fire settled into coals, and with it her breathing. Curiosity returned, quieter now, asking what a life chosen twice might become when fear was finally outpaced. She did not yet know the cost, only the direction, and that was enough to keep her still. Somewhere beyond the ridge, dawn practiced its light, and the path ahead waited, patient, unpromising, honest. Winter listened, holding its breath, ready to teach them what staying would require. Tomorrow would begin the asking. Together, morning arrived without ceremony, pale light slipping through frost edge glass, and Eliza woke with the unfamiliar feeling of having stayed. The storm had loosened its grip, leaving the world hushed and newly made, and she sensed that the day would ask something honest of her. Caleb was already awake, moving with the quiet confidence of habit, setting bread near the fire and glancing toward her door not to hurry her, only to include her in the rhythm he trusted. They worked side by side without instruction. Eliza learned the weight of the axe, the patience of the kettle, the satisfaction of order earned through effort. Her hands reddened and ached, yet she felt useful in a way admiration had never allowed. Caleb watched her closely, not for weakness, but for willingness, and what he saw settled something long unsettled in him. He spoke sparingly, but when he did, his words carried the steadiness of someone who had survived himself. Town returned to them like a memory that refused to fade. Supplies thinned, gossip sharpened, and Mrs. Holloway's eyes lingered as if counting days. Eliza felt the old pressure to prove her worth quickly, dramatically, beautifully. But the cabin asked for something slower. When she stumbled hauling water, Caleb steadied the bucket rather than her arm, trusting her balance. The gesture taught her dignity more effectively than praise ever had. Winter tightened again, testing their resolve with cold nights and lean meals. Eliza heard rumors carried on the wind, that the mountain man would send her away come spring, that beauty spoiled usefulness, that chosen things were easily returned. Fear found her one dawn as she packed a small bag, believing departure might spare her rejection. She stood at the door, breath fogging, heart racing toward old conclusions. Caleb did not block her path. He stood back, eyes clear, allowing her to respect her choice. "I chose you in winter," he said softly, the word steady as ground. That was never temporary. He did not promise ease, only truth, and the simplicity of it broke the habit of running. Eliza set the bag down, feeling the weight leave her shoulders as if it had been carried for years. Days passed, measured by small victories. Bread rose, traps filled, laughter surprised them both. Eliza's reflection changed, not softer, but surer, as if her features had learned a new language. Caleb's silence warmed, opening into stories shared by firelight, memories of losses endured, and hopes kept practical. They did not speak of love, yet it lived between gestures, in the way he saved the last apple for her, in the way she repaired his coat without asking. Spring hinted at itself cautiously. Snow retreated from the eaves, and light lingered longer on the table. Town judgments lost their authority as Eliza's confidence grew visible, undeniable. When Mrs. Holloway offered a tight smile, Eliza returned it kindly, needing no permission. Caleb watched her walk ahead, posture upright, and felt pride that asked for nothing in return. One evening, as thaw softened the earth, they stood outside together, mountains no longer looming but watching. Eliza spoke of the girl she had been, traded and measured, and Caleb listened without interruption. He told her the life he built to survive loneliness, and how it changed when she arrived. Their truths met without demand, forming something durable. The future did not announce itself, yet it felt possible. The cabin held warmth earned, not borrowed. Eliza understood that happiness was not the absence of hardship, but the presence of choice honored. She chose staying again, freely, and Caleb received that choice with gratitude rather than claim. As dusk settled, they shared a quiet meal, hands brushing naturally, eyes meeting without fear. The mountains breathed easier, as if satisfied. Eliza felt whole, not because she was loved, but because she had learned to stand where love could find her. Caleb felt the same, surprised by joy that asked him to soften without surrendering strength. The fire dimmed, leaving a steady glow, and the night held no threats. Winter had taught them what staying required, and spring offered its answer gently. Their ending was not loud, but was complete, a life chosen daily together and worthy of being remembered. Tomorrow would come, not as a question, but as a shared beginning, and the path ahead once feared now felt like home.